Hello, everyone. I'm Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer and host of WIN TV's Let's Talk. This afternoon, I'm really thrilled. I'm joined by Dr. Shawn Joseph, who's the interim superintendent of Prince George's County Public Schools. Dr. Joseph was appointed this summer by County Executive Aisha Braveboy, who referred to him as a highly distinguished career educator, scholar, and advocate. Dr. Joseph has a history with Prince George's County Schools, having served as Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning from 2014 to 2016. He also worked in Montgomery County Schools for years and has served as Assistant Professor of Educational Leadership, Administration, and Policy at the Howard University. At a press conference where his appointment was announced earlier this summer, Prince George's County Teachers Union President Donna Christie had this to say about Dr. Joseph. She said he presents as a problem solver, already identifying the issues, already talking about solutions and how we can move forward together as partners, and already talking about a compact of respect between our educators and the administrators. It's my pleasure to bring and introduce to you to some Dr. Shawn Joseph.
Hello.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Likewise. I was just, as you know, before we came on camera, I was commenting on your very, very clean office. What does this say about you, Dr. Joseph?
It just means I'm meticulous. I pay attention to details.
All right. Well, I'm paying attention that there's not a lot there that we have to focus on besides you, which I'm so happy about. You tell us a little bit about yourself, and I talked a little bit about your history with Prince George's County. You mentioned your mom calls you Shawn Joseph. I wanted to call you Doctor. So
Right.
Let's start from there. Where are you from?
I'm from New York. I'm from Long Island, a town called Central Islip. Yep. And then I went to Lincoln University, America's oldest historically Black college, founded in 1854. Some people argue it's a bunch of folk, but Lincoln is the first degree granting institution in 1854. Let me say it that way.
All right. I won't argue because I've heard that story or heard that history as well. So I'll go along with what you said. So you went to Lincoln.
Yeah. And while there, I met a student from South Philadelphia High School who struggled reading. And back then I didn't understand, how do we put people on the moon and not teach Black children in this country how to read? It gripped me. So I wound up becoming an English teacher and then moved on to be a reading specialist, team leader, a dean of students, an assistant principal. I was the Maryland State Principal of the Year in 2009 when I was in Montgomery County at Roberto Clemente Middle School, then supervised 34 schools in Montgomery County. So I spent 16 years there before going to Seaford, Delaware, in rural Delaware. I did that 2 years as superintendent. Dr. Kevin Maxwell brought me in to be his deputy superintendent for teaching and learning when he served as superintendent in the district. And then I left Prince George's County to become superintendent of schools in Nashville, Tennessee, where I was the first Black superintendent there before transitioning to Fordham University in New York for 1 year. And then 6 years at Howard. And at Howard, I ran an urban superintendent's academy where we placed about 26 superintendents in my time over those 6 years there. And then I taught just doctoral students in the politics of education and urban education class and an ed technology class.
Wow, that's quite a distinguished background and long background in education, which is clearly why so many folks were excited to have you in as the interim superintendent. Now, how long is that title going to last? Are they going to kind of finally give you the final title or what?
Time will tell. We have, I think within the next month or so, the board will identify a search firm. And then the search firm will actually run a process in Prince George's County because of law, a state law that's specific to Prince George's County. I believe the governor has to identify or appoint like 3 individuals from Prince George's County to kind of serve as a mini vetting group. And then they will vet applications and they will identify at least 3 candidates to submit to the county executive. And then in Prince George's County, the county executive has the power to appoint. as superintendent. And when she appoints the superintendent, then the board collaborates and manages the superintendent.
Wow. Okay. It sounds like a process,
Yeah,
but in the meantime, your work continues.
yeah,
And I want to go back to something you said earlier because you talked about meeting a young person um, early on who couldn't read,
mhm.
and you've been around school systems. That's still an ongoing problem. But what is your opinion, your attitude about that now? I mean, is there something that you've learned that sort of informs the work that you do today?
Yes, so when I went to Johns Hopkins University and got a master's in reading, and one of the things that I learned there is in America, most kids who have challenges with reading, it has nothing to do with their ability to learn how to read. It has to do with whether they had highly qualified teachers properly training them how to read. And so that's had a huge impact on me because I know we can get it right for most kids in this country with qualified teachers working with them.
And I hate to keep harping on this, but I love to read.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the rate of illiteracy, particularly in the Black community.
Yes.
And so, I mean, you sort of touched on a topic that's of great concern for me, but
Yeah.
what was your reading journey like? Did you start reading early in life? Did your parents encourage you? How did you become such, um, an advocate for
Yeah.
reading?
I don't know how it started, but I know, since I was in elementary school, I mean, I was in gifted programs in elementary school. And I think, some kids just naturally are verbal and that reading was something I picked up pretty quickly. I didn't plan on becoming a reading teacher. Like I can't say I had a love for reading. I could do it. I enjoyed it. It didn't bother me. I went to Lincoln to be a biology major, and I was in my junior year as a biology major. Upward Bound hired me to tutor calculus that summer that I met the student who couldn't read. We were reading Native Son that summer.
Wow.
So Richard Wright's book. I just thought any Black kid would get excited about learning about Bigger Thomas and all his experience and how Wright just pulled you into that world. And so when the students struggled with it, it just blew my mind, and I didn't realize it was a problem until that moment when Herschel Bailey, who was the head of Upward Bound at Lincoln, I remember he said, Sean, lots of kids struggle reading in America, especially from Philadelphia, especially Black children. And then that's what I felt like it was one of the first times God spoke to me because I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. Like, how do we let this happen here?
Yeah, strong story. Thanks for sharing that with me. So it's been what, 100 days? Are you counting?
Yeah, tomorrow we'll make 100. Yes.
And so, looking back, I mean, when you got the position, you started, the school year had not started.
Yeah.
So what has it been like? What are some landmark things that you think about as you reflect on those 100 days that sort of are defining your role?
One of the big things I found out in Prince George's County, I thought that was significant for how we move forward, is one of the questions I wanted to answer when I came to Prince George's County was, are kids growing in reading and math? And to what degree? And I wanted to know by school, I wanted to know by individual kid. And we get a lot of different data sources in the state. In one file, we can get data to show all the kids in the state of Maryland, how they did. So we can compare our kids to other kids. And what I found was that in Prince George's County, which is 96% Black and Latino, on average, our Black and Latino students do equal to or better than Black and Latino students across Maryland. In fact, Black students had higher achievement rates in Prince George's County than Black students across the state. And that was the case with, Latino students, because we constantly hear a negative narrative about Prince George's County, about, how kids aren't performing. And we tend to problematize, our community, when in fact, when you compare our kids to kids that look like them in the state, they actually do better. And then when I did the statistical analyses on every one of our schools in reading and mathematics to ask, are kids growing at adequate rates? I found that, in fact, they are. The challenge that we have is that many students might, come to us multiple grade levels behind because English isn't their first language, for example. We grow them a year, but they don't hit proficiency because they were multiple years behind, but they did grow adequately. The teachers did their job. The treatment of coming to school worked, but they didn't hit proficiency because they were multiple years. So what that said to me was that in Prince George's County, we don't have a remediation problem. We have a challenge where we have to accelerate kids.
Mm.
That's significant because it changes the approach you take and how you're working with students. If I'm working with students thinking I've got to remediate, I've got a deficit that I have to fill, then I take an approach to do that. But
Yeah.
if I say, we don't have deficits, we have to accelerate kids, that tells me something different and gives me a totally different approach. And so that's a profound learning, in the 100 days, because as we build plans, as we work, we're working thinking about how do we accelerate, not remediate. And so that's an expectations piece, and that's a strategy piece that I think can be a game changer for us.
I have not ever heard it explained that way. Of course, I'm not in the education field, so, but I've always heard teachers and parents and others who are in that field talk about the low expectation of children.
Yes.
And so they're really not approached like you're saying, from an acceleration standpoint. Let's push them a little bit further.
Yes.
Because they have the capacity to do more.
That's right.
Do better.
That's right.
So, do you have the population of or workforce of teachers that there that are either trained that way, or actually even in the classroom?
Yeah. So I think this is where, as I think about the budget for next year and the implications, I definitely think we have to make significant investments in professional development. Just for that reason, we're living in America right now, where again, from the president's office, we're problematizing Black and brown communities. We're talking about diversity and inclusion like it's some type of lowering of a standard to have a person of color in a role. So. I think that permeates the organization. You walk into a school that is predominantly Black and Latino, you shouldn't immediately think, oh, this must be a school with a lot of trouble, or this must be a school that's underperforming. That's a mindset piece that we have to dispel and wholeheartedly attack. And it could be because I went to Lincoln University, as I shared. I was a professor for 6 years at Howard University. I know what Black excellence looks like and feels like, and we've just got to push with that mindset and take no excuses, because I know of the potential. I know our kids can do just as well as any kid on the planet, period, hands down, no excuses. And we've got to work like that.
So from this, would one assume, because again, it's all perception, that students are really coming to school with a desire to learn, with a desire to move forward? Or because I would think they've heard this so much that they have internalized some of these negative opinions of them. So how are you working with that as well? Because they can't go to the training classes that you're going to hope to get money to pay your teachers to go to.
Absolutely. There's an educational psychologist, a world-renowned one from Stanford, named Claude Steele, and he has this theory called stereotype threat. And what it says is that children who internalize, they internalize that they're not good at something, they'll actually perform poorly because of that perception that the the thought that they think they can't do it. So if kids come up and you say, "Oh, I'm not good at math," well, if you keep telling yourself you're not good at math, guess what? When you take a math test, you're not going to do well because you're not going to push. You're not going to have that grit to move through. And so, I do think, in America, Black and brown children get so many messages that tell them that, they're not something. And I think as a school system that educates 96% again of our students are Black and Latino, I think it's essential that we ensure that we give them all the messaging that enforces what their potential is. We have to walk in and treat our children like they're geniuses. And everything we do has to be at a level that we are training geniuses. You can do it. We know you can do it. We know it's hard. Suck it up. And you got to push. We got to push them. We got to reteach, reassess, and even for and for our non-students of color, like everybody has to be pushed to the max.
Right.
And I don't think we do that consistently. And there's lots of research that shows when you have communities that are predominantly student of color, there can be lower expectations. And that can't be the case in Prince George's County. Not gorgeous Prince George's. We can't let that happen here. I don't know what happens in other places, but here we got to treat them like they're geniuses.
So on top of that, and I don't, I want to really talk about the great things in gorgeous Prince George's County schools. But, you also came in at a time when the children, the students, those Black and brown students of, let's say, Latino descent or African descent or what have you, were impacted by some administration decisions that, affect their families, immigration, also, resources for school lunch programs and what have you.
Yeah.
How have you been able to address that and really let your students feel, in a way, protected?
Yeah, it's hard to be honest with you. I mean, it's very hard when the reality is they go home and they have family members that are not there because they've been detained by ICE or they know that ICE is roaming in their neighborhoods. We have had a significant issue with truancy, particularly amongst our Latino families in the system. In terms of the SNAP programs and things of that nature, we've seen a huge influx of families applying for services that had not before, particularly with the shutdown happening. We've expanded our free and reduced lunch meals programming. So now we're offering hot meals in many more schools after school, like a supper. We've expanded that program because of the need and the demand that we know and the burden it could take off of families within our district. And so it's, these issues are significant and they have a definite impact here locally. So we've been working to communicate more. I mean, we had a job fair, for example, for furloughed workers and had over 450 people immediately get signed up substitutes within the district because they needed to do something part-time so the substitute teaching position was a great option for them to come in while they're waiting, just to bring some dollars into the house while we get through this national foolishness.
It makes sense because I've also heard just like Prince George's had challenges with having bus drivers to transport kids to school, and I guess filling those substitute teaching positions. So now that's the bright side of this. I guess you've been able to address that. But what about your buses? What about transportation?
Yeah, we've had a dramatic increase in getting our bus routes filled. We started a new app this year called Chipmunk, and Chipmunk is it gives families much more insight on where the buses are. Are they coming on time? The challenges. So we worked to ensure that all families now have access to this new app that's more precise and lets them know where the buses are. Our director of bus transportation, Kiba Baldwin just won the National Transportation Director of the Year award, which is a national award for our increased communication, our increased use of technology, working with families. We have a 1,200 buses. We're one of the largest bus fleets in the United States.
Mm.
And so, we're down to, under 100 vacancies that need to be filled. So we've made dramatic progress from previous years where we've had, 300 vacancies. In similar vein, last year we lost $20 million because we had 4,000 students that were not immunized. And in the state of Maryland, you have to have immunizations by September 30th. And families that don't comply, you lose that funding for those students while you work. This year, we went from 4,000, students not immunized last year to 44 this year.
44 students?
44 students, yes, from
Wow.
4,000.
Right.
So we've been intentional and paying attention to a lot of those details and things that because we can't afford to lose money for something like that.
Agreed. Yeah. So, Dr. Joseph, I appreciate you taking this time with us, and I don't want to hold you forever because I could talk to you forever about education. But I'm sure you have some priorities. You've looked at maybe what some of the gaps are that you see in the school system. So let's talk about that. What are some things that you really would like to get accomplished this academic year?
Yeah. So as we look towards the future, a couple things. One, we've got to support our special education students. It's really important that our students who need additional support get that support and continue to improve. As I move towards the budget season, I think it's going to be important for us to really start thinking about how we can better incorporate, artificial intelligence into our day-to-day work, helping teachers be more efficient and take some of the workload off that they're currently have, how we use it on the operation side to streamline, processes and do work, and how we help students utilize the technology. So AI is a big bucket for me as we're looking towards the future. Similarly, I think in being in Maryland, being in Prince George's County, we're such a rich community for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. I think we need to make some bold investments and have some expectations on quality STEAM programming throughout the district. Again, we've got to focus on professional development. I think we have to recruit and retain the best teachers we can find. And we've got to make sure the ones that we get, if we don't get the best and brightest, we got to train them up to be the best and brightest. So professional development has to be a priority for us as well. Again, we're in a district with 133,000 children, 22,000 employees. So safety and security has to be a big priority for us. I mean, we have to make sure we've got cutting edge technology to make sure people are safe, and we've got to make sure people are in the buildings to help make sure that we're safe. So those are some of the big bucket priorities. And again, we got to continue ensuring that students are doing well in reading and mathematics. And, I think we've got an opportunity to dramatically increase the amount of kids that take, college credits while in high school, particularly with so many great universities within our, backyard. And so there are just a multitude of things that we have to do. And, and again, a district with 208 schools and 133,000 students and 20 plus thousand employees, we've got to focus on organizational culture. It's got to, even though it's a big place, it's got to feel warm, and people have to feel a sense of belonging.
Right. Right. What about graduation rates? How is Prince George's County looking as it relates to that?
Yeah, I believe we're at about an 80% graduation rate within our district, which it could be much higher. I'm more concerned about that diploma meaning something than pushing on the number. I mean, I do think we have to increase the graduation rate, but we got to make sure that kids who are walking across the stage, that diploma actually means something. It means they're prepared to go live out their wildest dreams. And we've got to make sure that kids are, ready to either go to college, go into a career, enlist in the military, or can go out and be an entrepreneur. Like one of those 4 E's has to be a focus, and we should know, and kids should know that they're on one of those paths.
But in that light, and I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon, but they say parents can't do it alone, teachers can't do it alone. You definitely, as a superintendent, can't do it alone.
Right.
And partnerships, I would think, are critical for the success of where students go from here. Not only partnerships with your HBCUs and other universities in the area, but the business community as well. How is that shaping up?
Absolutely. It's one of the first things I said when I came back to Prince George's County is that we've got to get families engaged. I think our first partner has to be our families. We have to ensure that our families are connected. Our families know the resources we have. Our families know that we see them as true partners and are working with them in partnership to help them maximize their children's potential. I do think also, our business community, we've got to do a much better job of engaging. We've got great career technical education programs, and I think we have much room to grow ensuring businesses are connected to those career technical education programs. Right now, they're not as connected as I think they could be. And I think we could be doing more in that regard. Similarly, we've got a multitude of nonprofits in Prince George's County. I mean, Prince George's County has hundreds of nonprofits, and I don't think we have really engaged the nonprofit community as effectively as we could around our goals in supporting efforts. So that's where that has to happen for us as well. And like you said, I mean, we're in a place that has, I mean, University of Maryland College Park is like a public Ivy League, right in our backyard. And then you have Bowie State University that, it's one of the only historically Black colleges where you can get a PhD in computer science and so forth. We have University of Maryland, University of Maryland Global Campus here, which has been a leader in virtual education for decades, and they are specialized in cyber technology and all of the technical fields. And then of course our own Prince George's Community College,
right,
which educates thousands of children. So we've got a good ecosystem in our backyard, and we've got to strengthen that connectivity, and that is a priority for us.
I'm glad to hear that. That question was a little self-serving, I'll admit, because we have Washington Informer Charities, and we are the sponsor of the Prince George's County Spelling Bee.
Yes.
So we're really excited. Teachers and students are getting ready for that. And it's hosted every year at the University of Maryland College Park. So, in a way that's sort of
invitation. I'll try to be there. Yes.
We'll definitely let you know. We will definitely let you know. So Dr. Joseph, before you go, what have I missed? What is it that you might want folks to know that we haven't talked about so far?
I just think I think it's important for families, because families, we have a lot of families who attend our schools, obviously, but we have a lot of families who do not. That there are lots of families that are sending their children to private schools and other places. And I think, I think we got to hit that on the head. And I would encourage parents to take an opportunity to look at your neighborhood school, particularly as we continue doing the work that we're doing. If you've got $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a year to place your child in a private school, I'd question, what's the return on investment? If you take that, $20,000 a year that you're spending over the course of 12 years, you're $240,000 or so dollars. If you had invested that in a mutual fund for your children, you'd make them millionaires by the time they graduated from high school. And if you're sending them to, Bowie, Howard, University of Maryland, the same places we're sending our children, you've got to ask yourself, is that the best return on investment if your public school could give you that same access and opportunity? I mean, it's worth a conversation. I mean, I met somebody recently I was at a church in Prince George's County, and someone was telling me he was spending $50,000 a year to send his child somewhere. And I said, well, where would you go? And he said, I would be at, Flowers High School. And I just happened to know. I said, well, I don't know if you know this, but, the students at Flowers High School earned $8 million in scholarships last year. I mean, I just spoke to a student who just graduated from Princeton and is actually back at Flowers as a substitute before he goes to work for Baines Financial Services. And he was just wanted to give back and help kids, work on trying to get them into Ivy League schools like he went to from Flowers.
Mm.
So I said, I can't tell you how to spend your money, but I tell you it's worth it to walk over and just check Flowers out if you hadn't been there recently, because there are kids there doing pretty well that I know for sure, And so
Yeah.
I think we have to do a better job of communicating the great things that are happening in our schools and what the kids are doing once they leave our schools better, just for parents to be able to make an informed decision. I mean, I'm one who spends a lot of time thinking about wealth, particularly within Black and brown communities, and we should be thinking about investment in that way. What's the best investment? Now, if you're spending $50,000 a year because this school is going to get your kid into the Ivy League school of their choice, and that's something that's important, to you and for you, it makes sense. If you've got religious preferences where you want a religious-based education, makes absolutely sense. But I challenge the quality notion because there's quality in Prince George's County Public Schools. And we want families to feel it. Now, we've got work to do. I think one of the biggest narratives, the biggest conversations I'm having with staff internally is about variance. The fact that the difference between our very best schools and our most challenging schools is stark.
Mm.
And one of the things we must do, from a central office perspective, is find the pressure points to decrease that variance, understand the cause of that variance, and provide support to raise schools up while we're continuing to push schools to be better.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear the emphasis on families. And I'm really, really excited to hear, just, of course you would be, because you're the interim superintendent of public schools. So if anybody's going to promote public schools, it ought to be you. But you don't hear that as much, because people are we've gone through an era of all of these alternative approaches to education, where a lot of it is still right there in the public school setting. So I want to thank you so very much for sharing that with us, Dr. Joseph.
Yes.
This space here, Let's Talk, is open to you anytime you might want to share with us and our viewers. We wish you the best of luck this year. We also hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a happy holidays.
You too. And I promise to be back.
Wonderful. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And I want to thank you for watching this edition of Let's Talk, for having this amazing conversation with Dr. Shawn Joseph, Interim Superintendent of Prince George's Public Schools. Again, he wants families involved. He's looking to have businesses involved, the area schools involved. But most important, he wants to do what he can to make sure your children in Prince George's County get the best education that they can. He said it. I'm just repeating the words. So having said that, I want you all to have a great day. Thanks for watching Let's Talk. We'll see you next time.